morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I am thrilled to be back home. I still call it home even though I've been gone a long, long time, more years than I'm going to say. Welcome to our conversation. I'm just here to facilitate today because I am thrilled to be here with Grant Hill, who I've known all of his adult life and most of mine. And it's interesting that we're talking about the theme of departures, right? Because Grant, as Tessa mentioned, is departing NBA life, but I have never met anyone in 34 years of sports writing who is better prepared, in my opinion, to leave that career and make the transition as smoothly as I know that Grant is going to make it. And with that, I want to just start by, to kick off our conversation, Grant, by asking you about the transition. You're doing it right now. NBA season, the new one starts in 2 weeks. How does it feel to not be in training camp? How does it feel to not be a professional basketball player, but to be a former professional basketball player?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, Mike, thanks for those kind words, and thank all of you. I'm excited to be here as well this morning. You know, first of all, it feels great to be in Chicago and to not have to worry about Michael Jordan or Derrick Rose or all the great players who've played for the Bulls. But certainly it feels good. You know, when you're 41 years old, training camp is not easy and it's not fun. Certainly the time of the year where guys are getting their bodies ready for the upcoming season, everybody's in pain. And when you're old, like I've been for the last 4 or 5 years in the NBA, certainly it's tough. But I'm excited. I'm excited about what I have going on and about what's in store for me in the future.
Okay, to be fair about this, again, Grant and I have known each other a long time. I worked in Washington when he was playing first high school basketball in Washington, growing up in Washington, D.C. And then we also have lived in Arizona for a while, so we see each other and talk about some of these things. But I know your day is not that of a retiree. I know that you could not help yourself and just sort of relax and be retired. So what does retirement mean so far?
Well, you know, I thought retirement was playing golf and drinking lemonade on the porch. And
it's not?
It's not. No, it's not. You know, I'm a busybody, and certainly, you know, both my parents are busybodies as well, and they both still work in their advanced age. They'd get mad at me for saying that, but
can't wait to tell your mother you
But no, I mean, I have a lot of interest and a lot of things that I want to try to pursue, and certainly had to put a lot of those things on hold for the last 19, 20 years, pursuing, you know, prolonging, I guess, my adolescence and playing in the NBA. But I have been busy, and it's been fun. It's been invigorating. You know, I think when you know, for me, you get into a routine. And I think in sports, as athletes, we're very much routine-based. You get into a routine on the day of a game. You know, everything, I like to say that from the time I wake up in the morning until the time I walk on the court to start that game on game day, it's a routine. And you kind of get into that. You're on the free throw line. You get into everything in sports is routine-based. And now all of a sudden, that routine is gone. And I'm sort of developing a new rhythm to what I'm doing. And so with that said, I have been unbelievably busy, more than I thought. I was telling you backstage, my wife, who's been on me for the last 3 or 4 years to retire from playing basketball, you know, so I can be home more and be around the house more. Just the other day, she said, "Why don't you go back and play? Because I think you had more free time when you were playing." But no, I have fortunately had a lot of things to keep me busy, a lot of things to jump into as I'm transitioning from one career to many others.
That's the pragmatic side. But what about the emotional side, Grant? I mean, not only did you have 4 years of Duke, that just shows how long ago this has been now, 4 years of college basketball for a 2-time All-American and multiple championship winner in college. But then you had, what, 18 seasons in the NBA? 19
where I was employed, but maybe, you know.
19.
Some say I maybe played 15.
So that's 23 years. That's more than half your life. What about the emotional side of this? Guys always talk about missing the camaraderie, missing the locker room. And I mean, that's euphemistic for a lot of things, but emotionally, how does that feel? Is there an absence?
It's a great question. I have been doing this, my entire adult life, and really, playing basketball. This time of year, you're getting yourself ready, really going back to high school, 1987. And so, I was looking, and I had a chance to interact and meet some of the students who are here this morning, and I was thinking, like, wow, I was in the NBA before most of them, if not all of them, were born. And so I'm really old. And, but, it is an adjustment. It's hard. And, as excited and as thrilling, as invigorating as it is to do some of the things that I've always wanted to do, there's a bit of sadness, walking away from the game. And I also feel the longer you play, the longer you've done it, the harder it is. And so, for me, I retired this past May. I was able to, obviously get into some business things, spend time with my family, do some speaking, so really keep myself busy, and really did not miss playing basketball. I, was ready to move on and so on. And I had a chance 2 weeks ago to go back to Duke University, where the Brooklyn Nets were doing training camp. And for this new show I'm on, I interviewed Kevin Garnett. And so I got to the practice early and was watching Jason Kidd, who we came into the NBA together, co-rookies of the year together, retired the same weekend. I saw him and Paul Pierce and some of these guys, and instantly I started to miss it. It was the first time that I started to really miss the game. And so as we anticipate the start of the new season, I'm sure I'll be dealing with those emotions and feelings. But fortunately, I can still stay around the game and still be involved in the game, still be a fan of the game, doing some television, which I've signed on to do, and certainly going and taking my children and watching games and being a spectator.
We know that retirement has not gone well from some of your peers, people I've gotten to know very well, even though they've made a lot of money.
Right.
They've had a lot of fame. They've had great success athletically. And these are not, people want to paint them because of their inability to retire gracefully as somehow deficient or not bright, which is not the case at all. But you know of some of these potholes, if you will, because you've seen guys stumble into them. Has it affected the way you prepared to retire? And what are some of the ones that sort of give you some pause as you go into this?
It's interesting. I've been very fortunate. My dad played professional football in the 70s, played for the Cowboys and the Washington Redskins, and then my mom has been in the business world and is really an amazing woman. And so I think of this quote from a Duke history professor, really one of the preeminent African-American history historians, who passed away in 2009, a guy named Dr. John Hope Franklin. And he said, if I've seen further than others, it is for standing on the shoulders of giants. And I feel like I certainly had giants in my parents. But my father, and seeing his colleagues and contemporaries, and just getting that perspective as a kid, growing up, idolizing professional athletes and one day wanting to be one, but also realizing that it does end. And it's not easy. And it was just as difficult in the 70s, maybe more difficult at times, because they didn't make as much, but as it is now. And so when I came into this, I kind of knew, and I was always thinking, even at a young age, about when that day will come. And so, what did I do? I really tried to work hard on developing, the skill sets outside of playing basketball. I worked on my jump shot, staying in shape, all the things that you need to do to survive in the NBA, but really my own sort of personal development and stepping outside of my comfort zone, going on the road, sitting down with people, using the platform or using the celebrity that comes with playing as an opportunity to really learn and try to absorb. And so sadly, in order to get really good, in order to make it to the NBA, basketball consumes you. It really does. Like, I never had a job before. Every summer I'm playing basketball. I'm in camps. I'm going to different all-star games. That was sort of the sacrifice, even in high school, that was necessary to make it to college. And then on from college in the NBA. So it really consumes you. And then and also it validates you. Now all of a sudden I'm a big man on campus. I'm more attractive to the females in high school. and that, moves on to college and the NBA. And so this very thing that has consumed your entire life, this very thing that has validated you in a lot of ways, all of a sudden, instantly at 41, at 30, at 27, at whatever your age is, you walk away from it, and it's not easy. And so a lot of guys do have a difficult time. A lot of guys struggle with what's next. And, I've tried to, and I'm going through that now, so I don't want to pretend to have mastered it, but I recognize that it's not easy. But I refuse to accept that the best years are behind me. I feel like the best years are in front of me, and look forward to to doing many things. My challenge is not trying to do them all at once.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about retirement, I get to observe the retirement of guys I've known in that first life. I mean, I've worked with Magic Johnson for years now, and I got to know Magic when I was a student at Northwestern, and he was playing in Michigan State. I'm going to admit that.
Man, so how? Wait, that was 1970? No, I'm sorry.
It was 1978, the first time. But what's interesting is that the Magic has had a remarkable life, and that the second act, if you will, for somebody who may be the greatest basketball player who ever lived, the second act of his life being greater than the first.
Right.
And given obviously the difficulty of also being HIV positive, it's extraordinary. For different reasons,
right.
I tell people all the time, life begins when you retire. And that's not the case for any of the rest of us. I mean, I guess the most difficult departure I ever had really was leaving home. I don't know if anybody out there go to St. Ignatius? Good. So did I. St. Ignatius and Northwestern. And the toughest departure I had was leaving Chicago. I don't think I really knew it at the time. It became that. Mm-hmm. But then you realize your life starts after some of those major departures, and you move simply into another phase. You're not departing as much as you're transitioning.
Right.
And so, I find that to be fascinating. So many athletes transition into something that is almost exclusively athletic.
Right.
I mean, you know how many friends and colleagues you have. Obviously, we've been talking about Chris Collins, the new basketball coach at Northwestern. A departure and a transition for him meant staying in basketball and now being a successful head coach. How did basketball tempt you, or did it seriously tempt you to stay in basketball exclusively?
When I announced my retirement in May, I had a number of coaches who inevitably I played with or against, who beat me to coaching or beat me to retirement, but offered me opportunities to be on their staff. There was a certain organization that wanted me to come in and sort of mold me to run the team in a year or two. And so those opportunities were very tempting. And I love the game. The game is great. I still feel like I have a lot to offer the game. And you feel like you've gained so much as a result of it. You want to try to help the game and help others who come behind you. But for me, 19 years in the NBA, I felt like I needed to decompress. I just needed to get out of the rat race and get away from it. And so they were very tempting, those opportunities. But getting back to what you said about departure and also about some of the examples of guys like Magic Johnson and so on, I think with regards to departure, we go through sort of many departures throughout our life. Similar. When I left home, I'm an only child of two only children, so we're very close. And all of a sudden, I'm getting ready to go to Duke University. And true story, I called Tommy Amaker, who's now the head coach at Harvard, who was an assistant coach at Duke then, 2 weeks before freshman orientation. And I basically said, I'm not good enough, I don't think, to play in the ACC. Duke, I think, would be too challenging of a university. So I just want to get out of my letter of intent, my scholarship, and I want to go to George Mason, which is in Northern Virginia where I grew up. And I can live at home. And so, that was a scary time. Leaving Duke to go to Detroit in the NBA. I mean, that was a period. Leaving Duke or Detroit to go to, so there's constantly in sports, constantly in life where we transition to a next phase. And sometimes it can be exciting, but it also can be nerve-wracking. But I found that when you do step outside of your comfort zone, when you do something new, when you try something new, that's when there's a tremendous opportunity for growth. And so now, in terms of examples, certainly not everyone can be Mike Wilbon. So I have had to lower my standard here in terms of what I can try to do. But people like Magic Johnson, who I grew up idolizing and certainly has transitioned as well as anybody into a whole new world. And I'm sure, once again, there's a number of people here in the audience, particularly the high school kids, who probably, if they know Magic, they know him more as this successful business entrepreneur who's slowly taken over the world, and less about, you know, his on-the-court talents and contributions to the game. And that, you know, I mean, that speaks volumes about Magic and how he's been able to do that. But for me, Roger Staubach. Another quick little story. I was born in Dallas. My dad played for the Cowboys. He was expecting a girl, so he had all these girls' names lined up. And so I arrived, 10 pounds, 8 ounces, a boy, and he was unprepared. Now, anyone who knows my dad knows that he can't make a decision to save his life. And so about 3 or 4 days went by, and you know, I was still named Baby Boy Hill. So his teammate, his friend, his quarterback, Roger Staubach, came by the hospital to visit this big, large child, baby, and said, "Calvin, we got to give this boy a name." And so he ended up naming me Grant Hill, and so that's neat, and that was certainly neat as a Cowboy fan growing up in Washington to be able to brag about that. But you know, people like him who've made that transition and have gone on from having one successful career to another. But it's not always about making money and being in business, because we all define success differently. It's just finding something that fulfills you, finding something that you look forward to every day, getting up, going to work, and living your life. And so those are 2 examples. I have other examples of guys who maybe aren't as well known, but those are the people you aspire to and you respect and you certainly look to. And I do now, and I did 20 years ago when I first got into the NBA.
This being Chicago Ideas Week, I mean, one thing I know about you is that you solicit ideas, and that sort of makes you percolate in some ways. Who did you talk to solicit ideas about retirement and this whole transition? Right. Besides your parents?
Well, no, it's interesting. I mean, I talked to a lot of guys that have retired. I've talked to a lot of contemporaries of mine, people who I played against in the '90s, and actually listened to the same music that I listened to, unlike a lot of my teammates the last few years. But getting advice, what do you have to look forward to? What do you miss about the game? If you could go back and do it differently, what would you have done maybe?
What would you do differently?
What would I do differently?
I can't imagine you could do, I could think of one thing.
Well, if my wife were here, she could, if I could go back, I would probably get second, third, and fourth opinions on my injuries. I had a series of injuries that really sidelined me for a good portion of 4 years, and I would do that differently. Now, with that said, I'm in a weird kind of way glad that happened, glad the injuries and the setback and sort of getting humbled and going through all that, because I like who I am today, and that's a large part of because of going through that ankle ordeal in Orlando years ago. But there's a lot. I mean, I think back to my years in Detroit as a player. There's certain things I would have handled differently. We all have that. We all have things that, as time, we have perspective. We can look through a different set of lenses that we would go back and maybe do differently. But the management of my injuries and my health, I probably would have tried to do a little differently.
We got about a minute left. I've learned to obey a clock, as you guys who tune into PTI may know. There won't be a buzzer up here to stop me, but we do have a minute. Anything, Grant, that as you embark upon this, and this is a fascinating week in terms of engagement and being able to listen and exchange ideas. Anything else you want to leave the audience with, particularly students?
Yeah, I mean, I think for everyone, and particularly the young students here, really, there's a great program that's set up here, and an opportunity to hear people from all walks of life, all industries, and get their perspective on life, on departure, on who they are, what's made them who they are, what's made them successful. And I'm excited. I'm envious of you young guys, you young students, you young folks, because I wish I had had an opportunity to experience something like this back during my formative years. But thank you. Enjoy the rest of the speakers, and I want to thank you, Mike. It's not every day you get interviewed by Michael Wilbon, so this is quite a treat for me.
Too many days he's been interviewed by me for one reason or another. Thank you. And just as a way of closing, I would encourage you, again, I'm fortunate. I mean, being a reporter for X number of years, a columnist for 30 years plus, and now analyst, whatever that means. What it means is I have a past that allows me behind the curtain. And I don't mean that one. I mean behind the curtain to see lives continue in different ways. And so I am, as much as, again, I've spent all of my life watching certain people do the things they do. And in various sports, Olympic sports, football, basketball, baseball. I've watched Grant's whole life play out professionally, and I'm even more excited about his next act. And so I would just encourage you guys, just, as you pursue things today, take note of people and where they're going. And because I think his second act is going to be as spectacular in different ways as his first. And I can't wait to watch it, and glad to be here to sort of kick it off in a formal way. Grant, thank you, and everybody at Chicago Ideas Week, thank you.
Thank you.